Is there anything from your breakout session that comes to mind right now that you could summarize for us right now? Because I could do that too.
Yeah, I think just breaking the thought pattern of like, hey, what do I say when a prospect says this? And you're like, well, what's your offer? Backtrack a couple seconds. You just realize that people, when they're doing sales, think way too formulaic instead of just like understanding what the fuck the offer is. And they're looking for like these 3 to 4 sentence like rebuttals that will just solve objections. You're like, no, if you're actually an expert at what you do and you could just talk people through it, they'll end up trusting you because they're like, oh, this person understands my issues better than I do.
Dude, I feel like
and they'll come to the conclusion with you simultaneously on the call, as opposed to you just doing like the traditional objection handling, which is like you empathize with them, you throw a rebuttal at them, and then you throw like your proposed solution.
Dude, I feel like this plays so heavily into copywriting, and I've said this on a couple of my offer calls. I'm like, you guys are thinking of copywriting as like a skill to be sold as opposed to a fundamental to understand.
Yeah.
Like if you understand copywriting, what is the whole premise of copywriting? It's delivering an argument why you should buy this thing. Right. Okay, now walk through all of the logic and all of the possible situations by which somebody should purchase this. And if you come to all of the conclusions, you're going to have a big giant logic branch of if this, then this, if this, then this is why you should buy here. If you follow this tree branch by this way, you should buy. If you follow it this way, you should buy. If you follow it this way, you should buy. If you follow it this way, you shouldn't buy. And there actually are people who shouldn't buy, and that's what you're trying to deduce on a sales call is just walk people through this logic branch. And if you're able to do that on your sales page or on your sales assets, then it makes it easier on the call.
That's what was happening. We were doing like a good amount of like just live role playing there, and somebody would throw an objection at me, and I would ask for more information. I would give them my response, and then this one student just kept writing everything down. We're like, dude, like stop writing this down. Like this is super specific made up scenario. Like these answers are, I'm never going to say the same thing twice on the call. It's just from my understanding of what he said, I'm walking him through why his thought process was incorrect in the first place. And he's like, oh. And then he goes back to write. I'm like, dude, drop the fucking pen. Stop writing.
I've never taken a sales call in my life, but what I've deduced is you want to pull out their pain points in the beginning and then use those pain points as a solution at the end to sell it to them. Is that logical thinking?
Oh, hey, Christian.
No. Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
I just
put me on the calendar, boys.
I mean, it's just.
I was like, that's like a gross oversimplification of what we're talking about.
That's all he does on a day,
Yeah.
bro, and nothing else.
It's like, what are you struggling with? They're like, need leads. I can do that for you, and then right here, take my money.
Yeah, I mean, like if someone says you drop a price, oh, that price seems steep. Compared to what?
I mean,
I think what I could probably do is I think I could just go get a VA to go get the leads and then and send it through my email software right here. It's like, oh, okay, well, I've actually experienced that before. And what happens with these VAs is they're going to tell you they're going to get you a bunch of leads, and while they're going to technically get you leads and emails, it's going to be info at support at emails. They're not going to have access to the kind of data that we do via ListKit. And then additionally, you can't just drop these into your email marketing newsletter. Like you got to actually set up like an automations platform and do multi-domain routing and warm the domains up to make sure they actually get delivered. And you don't want to do it on your main inbox because then it's going to get burned. But it's like,
I mean, I've had a few people ask me, like, what's the pricing on the placement offer? I stated it, and then I stated why. They're like, okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. No, of course. It's just different when you're live on a call and, like, you're physically trying to pull over, like, $15,000 from somebody.
Yeah.
Like, the uncomfort, the nerves that you have to talk through. It's a lot more stuff than just, like, hey, does this make sense? Yes. But it's like, okay, why do I have to do this now?
So do you feel like it matters how much they charge on their end? Because I was on the call with 2 web design guys, like, talking about copy and stuff. And they're like, oh, yeah, tell me about the placement offer. Like, what's the fee? I told them the fee. Explain why there's a fee because we have to recruit the guy, train him, consult with him, make sure you get results, all this shit. And they were like, yeah, okay, because they charge 15 to 20K on their end.
Yeah, so of course
for
it
a
matters,
website.
that's
So
gonna,
yeah, you got one deal, you're good. Like
yeah.
But it's not even that. But they understand why we command that price point because they command a bigger price point for a website. But like if a guy's charging 2K, is it harder for him to realize like, oh, why would I ever pay you this much?
Well, I think you're depending
on what the retention looks.
Yeah,
like.
I think there would be a differentiation between someone who's charging 2K versus someone who's charging 2K and is currently at 200K a month, right?
There's that, and there's also LTV. Like, what does the retention look like?
Yeah, and if someone's business is too small, they can't conceptualize the concept of LTV in the first place. Because it's like they make $6K a month.
They've been in business for 2-3 months.
Yeah, they associate the income of their business as their personal income. And then if you like P&L call today, the analysis of client ascension is via like an entirely separate entity versus our personal incomes. Like it's just like you just think of it different. Where it's like, how can I deploy this X amount of capital to get a specific return at least above 2X? And you just think of it differently.
Yeah, no. So I think it's how much they charge, but I also think of like what type of business owner it is, because for somebody like our boy Brian Moncada, like he just hears that and he's like, yeah, that makes sense. Let's do it. And he just like send the invoice, like no further thought. But for somebody who's at like 5 to 10K a month, the odds that they've seen substantial ROI on a 5-figure investment is next to zero. Just because if they had, they likely wouldn't be at 5 to 10K a month. So when you get them on a sales call, they can say, yes, that makes sense. But then either because they had a bad experience before, or because they just have that self-limiting belief that they can actually afford to spend that much money, number one, and will actually see return on that, number two, is where they start to kind of like freak out a little bit.
But then it's so logical. It's like, okay, go sign with a lead gen agency and pay 4 months of a retainer, and you're at the same place you were with us, and now you owe more on top of that, whereas with us, it's all paid off.
The biggest difference, too, is a lot of these guys that are in the 5 to 10K a month range, they have the luxury of time, which means they can go through a done-with-you offer because they have the time to learn and implement, whereas a placement offer is for guys, like you said, like Brian, that are managing a team, that are managing $200,000 worth of client revenue. They don't have the time to go out, learn cold email, and implement it. And so that's also the differentiator, and why, as a business, you have to, like Ty told us on the podcast, do it yourself for beginners, done with you for guys in that middle level, and then done for you is really for like the whale clients, like the Jordan Belforts of the industry.
If you pay attention, you can see on the applications that we get inside Slack, just inherently the amount of better businesses that submit an application for the placement offer is way better, just because of the phrasing and whole idea of the offer in the first place. Larger businesses, they don't, like Andre just said, they do not have the luxury of free time. They need all of the logistical intensity packaged up into the offer.
Yeah.
The only caveat I would put on that is like done with you or just like straight consulting can make a lot of sense if they have somebody in-house that's already there and kind of underperforming, where you're consulting one of their own employees.
Yeah, I can give another example of this. I want to learn SEO right now. Like I just do. And I hit someone up on Client Ascension. I was like, hey, bro, can you send me like a coaching thing on SEO? Like, I want you to teach me everything you know about SEO. I want to know how to do this. And I can go buy course. If you have a course, I'll buy the course. I don't care. Just teach me how to do this. I just want to know. Sometimes it's just different people want different things. And that's what's important about having an offer stack. But big caveat, if you're at like fucking 10K a month, don't make an offer stack because you're just going to get too confused. You're not going to know how to operate it correctly. There's just like a thing where it's like you get to $1 million a year, you can start introducing other offers. You can do that thing.
Yeah. I tell guys in the program all the time, like our lead gen agency, Knowledge X, we got to 100K a month with one offer, posting on Twitter and sending cold emails. That's it. Nothing else.
Yeah. And you like, just do it long enough. You do it for so long. And this is so crazy. Like,
it wasn't that long though. It was like a year and a half.
2 years.
Yeah.
Yeah,
which, if you tell that to most
so
people,
fast.
It's like, but then the other person sitting there being like, oh, like 2 years.
Yeah, well, you say, oh, yeah, I built 100K a month in a year, or a year and a half. They're like, but they don't understand that the first 6 months of it was fucking zero. And then the next 6 months of it was still like shaky. And then the last 6 months was like, oh, we're good. And people were, well, it's still, that's not a lot of time until you're like the individual human experimenting every one of those 365 days.
Yeah.
Then it's different. And people can't stick with that. So this is so interesting. I saw this stat one time. It was in another book that I read this. And they said, I'm going to use random numbers. It's like 92% of all quotes from a book are within the first 20 pages of a book. And the reason why that is because no one finishes the book.
The LeBron James paradox.
I used random numbers there. They aren't correct, but it's the premise. That's almost all of the quotes from books on the internet are from the first 20% or the first fifth of the books that they're quoted from. Because most people picking up a book just don't get to the end of the book. It makes hella sense. So most people who start a business don't get past the third month. It just makes sense.
Hey guys, if you enjoyed this short clip, check out the full interview here. And if you want to see more clips from this episode, check it out right here.